Hey guys, welcome to After Hours. The bar may be closed, but we'll always stay open for you. And today I wanted to discuss with you all Russian thinkers, Russian writers. I don't know what it is about them, but they seem to fascinate me in the most captivating way. I love Dostoevsky and Tchaikovsky. Tchaikovsky is a composer, for those of you who may not know. And Chekhov, some of my favorite writers and some of my favorite thinkers, and even some of my favorite musicians, all happen to be Russian. And it's really weird. And it's something that I remember I had discussed with my sister once, trying to figure out, what is it about these guys in Russia that I'm so captivated by? And she looked at me and goes, well, is it possible that they have an insight into truth from a perspective that you didn't realize? And I sat there, I was like, oh my gosh, yes. And that seems to be the case, because with a lot of the Russian writers, we see a lot of particular themes that permeate the story in a way that most Western stories wouldn't follow. They're kind of darker, more brutal. They face the really existential dread that just hits every single character. I know it was a horrible way of saying that, but for example, you have Dostoevsky. Dostoevsky wrote Crime and Punishment. He wrote The Brothers Karamazov. He wrote Notes from the Underground. And each of his characters seem to have to face the existential dread of what it means to be human. If this was the humanities, I could teach an entire class just on Eastern thinkers and Russian thinkers. And I think that follows suit also in the plays of Chekhov. Chekhov typically tends to be more depressing. In his two best, in my opinion, plays, he has The Seagull and he also has Ivanov. Both of those are characters that are dealing with the passions of their life and realizing that they don't come true. And then they have to face the dread of life where all of your hopes and dreams have crumbled around you, and what can you do about it? And most of the time, it ends horribly. Suicide seems to be a thing that just a lot of Russian thinkers thought was okay to keep in their books, and you kind of sit there, especially in Chekhov's plays. Both The Seagull and Ivanov end up killing themselves in the end. And it is brutal and shocking, and you sit there and you just are at awe of what just happened, because you're like, wait a minute, especially as a Western American thinker for myself, with the stories that I've been bombarded with in our lives, is that, oh, well, there's always a happy ending. People will figure it out in the end. That's not the case in these stories. And a lot of these stories, that's not the case. It's that life is brutal and sometimes it has tragic endings, but they have insight into their characters that are just remarkable. I don't think that there is a better description of depression than in Ivanov. I don't think that there is a better description of love lost than in The Seagull. I don't think that there is a better description of existential dread than in Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov. You have Ivan, who's an atheist, and he has to deal with the dread that lives within him, and he faces that towards the climax of the book. And there are just so many things that, as Westerners, we almost seem to hide behind our stories. We don't want to face that truth. But that's the punch of a lot of the Russian stories that I have come across. And it captivates me. It's almost macabre, and a lot of people may sit there and think to themselves, Gabe, are you okay? I know you have a show about drinking. Is there something more going on here? Is this a little too brutal for you? And it's like, well, no, it's if as we continue in this life and we pursue absolute truth, because I think that's the most important thing, is for us to pursue absolute truth, objective truth, both in ourselves and in reality. We can find that specifically in literature and in fiction. And I have found a tremendous perspective of the absolute truth of being in these characters, in these writers. Solzhenitsyn did it when he described the Gulag Archipelago. Dostoevsky does it when he describes the existential dread and the difficulties of life in Tsarist Russia with Brothers Karamazov and Crime and Punishment and the guilt and just the human experience. He captures it so well. And I don't want to repeat myself too much, but that is what is so incredible to see in these authors and in these thoughts. And I think we as historians, and we as mixologists, and we as people ought to understand and take those ideas, those thoughts, those stories, and apply them to ourselves, because we start to recognize what absolute truth is. And as we move toward that absolute truth, that universal truth, then I believe that society will be so much better. Because if we're all on the same page, then we can all learn how to get along within the confines of what works. And that is what absolute truth is. And that is why I love reading from the Russians, because they offer a perspective into absolute truth that I haven't encountered anywhere in a lot of my Western readings. But just a little bit of food for thought for you guys. If you guys disagree, if you think I was talking too much, if you guys have your own thoughts and opinions, please feel free to let me know in the comments. I would love to get y'all's opinion on this, because I love talking about this stuff. So thank you so much for sticking around with us here after hours, and we can't wait to see you next time. Here, the bar is always open, and for you guys, I'm always happy to make a drink. Cheers.